Okay, Russians in the NCAA swimming. Russia legacy in NCAA swimming. Well, this is going to be about Morozov v. Minakov. So who's Morozov? Vladimir Morozov, Andrey Minakov, Russians in the American education system who swim as part of like collegiate swimming in the NCAA in the United States of America. So I'm going to compare these two and talk a little bit about like the legacy of Morozov and then kind of like not what Minakov is up against, but like they're similar enough that comparisons have been made, so I'm just kind of providing, I guess, my 2 cents on the situation. And so I'm going to start with the kind of like blaringly obvious with these two if one is familiar enough with them. I've followed them both for several years now, so I guess I'll start with saying that is Morozov. I'm a breaststroker. He's a legend in the breaststroke community, especially amongst those of us who are amateur and not professional. We're kind of in a unique spot where we can assess like all professionals and like not get competitive because we're not professionals ourselves. And Morozov is he's a one and only in the world in terms of his stroke proficiency. Like he's won gold medals in backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly, and freestyle and individual medley at international championships and or the Swimming World Cup, and with good like fast times. So he and it's brought up because he did some of that while he was still competing collegiately, so he still represented his country in international competition. He's also continued to diversify and improve after college. So that's a legacy component, is Russia had a really great impact, and via this person, Vladimir Morozov. And so Andrey Minakov is now part of the system, and well, I'm just gonna put this. They're both cuties. So I'm a woman. They're attractive Russian men. So the first evaluation criteria are kind of like talking about what like Minakov is up against. Well, why am I phrasing it that way? Because we're gonna start with eye candy. So there's kind of like hair and physique. So let's start with hair. Vladimir Morozov is naturally a brunette, and Andrey Minakov is naturally a blonde. Now, I myself am like, my hairstylist called me a dirty blonde, and it's more golden than like stereotypical like bleach blonde, which is kind of where Andrey Minakov is. Some people are suckers for blondies. I'm not that person. I actually prefer darker hair. So like if we're just going purely based on aesthetic, for me, Vladimir kind of takes it over Minakov. However, Minakov does still have good hair, and he has something in his interviews and stuff that I've seen. He has what I call porcupine hair, where he does this really unique like styling where it's like very pointed, like little shards of hair. So I call it porcupine hair. So I give him a check mark because of his styling abilities. Like I've tried styling my hair when it was longer, and like that's really freaking amazing, his styling abilities. So Minakov definitely takes it on porcupine hair. So that's a check. And a second check is some of the more recent interviews, the hair will lie down when it's wet, which is good because if one uses too much gel, speaking from experience, like I did a mohawk, and the gel, if you use too much gel in your hair, it doesn't actually lie down. So it means he's using like natural or no product, enough that his hair lies down flat. And then in some of his interviews, his hair is more textured, like soft looking. I do pay attention to these details. And so he gets a double check because of I can see textural variation in his hairstyling. So double check. I would say he's on par when it comes to hair. Physique, okay, Morozov is like this beefy Russian man. There's like, Russian men are just extremely, at least these two are like very well built, but Russian men in general are very well built compared to like American men in swimming. And I like the only people who would like compete like on a national level, and I'll throw coaches in there, is like Australian men might be as well built as Russian men. They're both good. they're the eye candy that like they're this as well as like their stroke technique and stuff like that. Their joy, I didn't mind watching because I enjoy watching that kind of thing. Like just them swim. Yeah. Which I got that comment growing up, which is like, do I interpret that as a weird thing? And I realized no, it's just like sometimes it's just fun to see someone looks good executing a stroke, and those things don't always align. So it's kind of an appreciation of the aesthetic of these two. So then the next valuation criteria is butterfly. They're both fast at butterfly. Minakov has like a 44 or something for the 100-yard butterfly. 44 seconds. And that was at mid-season his first year, so not even championships season, his first year in the college system here in the United States of America. The American record, which is the same as the US Open record, which is like the fastest time swim in like pools in the United States of America, which is relevant for the NCAA because if Minakov swims faster than the American time, he gets the US Open record. So anybody of any nationality can win that record. He has a 44, and the record is like he has a 44, and the record is like a 43. And like if following a evolution trajectory, he could smash that record by like a good second or two, if not more, by the time he's a senior. It's so like this guy's really freaking fast. And Morozov was really freaking fast. And I've been keeping up with Morozov in the World Cup. And he's really evolved as a butterflyer. He's always been really good at butterfly. But he's been doing butterfly on relays and stuff too. So I'd say they're both good at butterfly. But I guess for Minakov, it's I've already followed him during the college season, and then outside of the college season, he competed for Russian Swimming Federation at a World Championships, and I followed him there. So he's approaching on par of like the ability to hold my attention outside of the collegiate realm. The next one is freestyle. Again, this is an area where Minakov might be able to get a couple of what are called US Open records. He's very, very fast, and he's just in his first year. Morozov was very, very fast. Is very, very fast at freestyle still. I'm going to leave it as that. They're very, very fast, and Russians are, compared to Americans, so I live in America, so that's why I'm making this compared. Compared to Americans, the Russians are remarkably consistent in they don't treat regional championships as second rate like a lot of American swimmers do. They'll be like, oh, I don't need to compete at the Pan American Games, which is like open to everybody in North and South America, so then they don't. Versus Russians, as I've observed, do compete at those championships. What am I saying? I'm saying there's a bit more of, if they're fast, they represent their country, be it their choice or not, they still do. If someone's being forced, speaking from experience, if someone's forcing me to do something I don't want to do, it can actually make me sick, and I can't actually perform. So it's not bad enough that kind of thing happens. So I would say, if there's even coercion at all. And so I'd say on the freestyle level and just consistency of performance, Russians are like leagues ahead of Americans on just being committed to their country at kind of all scales of international competition and not cherry picking. So yeah, I like these two. They're both good freestylers. I think Minakov has room to catch up to Morozov, but he's starting off really well, so I have hopes for him. The next one is breaststroke. So Morozov was really good. Vladimir Morozov was really good at breaststroke, both in international competitions while he was swimming for the NCAA and afterwards. He set a European record in 2018, which, like, for those who are familiar or unfamiliar with breaststroke, like, the rise of Adam Peaty was roughly 2016 plus or minus a year. So this guy set a European record. Great Britain and Russia both count as part of Europe in the time of Adam Peaty. That's how fast this time was. and he's still fast at breaststroke. And so there's a bit of, we've already covered 2 strokes, but he's on, like, and there was nobody that came close to him in his short course meter breaststroke time until like 2021 in Americans, like not even within half a second. So like he crushes American men in breaststroke. And so what about Minakov? Well, I'd like to see Minakov do it. The American, so we have a abnormally slow the Americans have an abnormally slow 100-yard breaststroke time, because like the person who the current record holder, Ian Finerty, the guy before him is like 3 seconds slower than the American record holder in long course meters. Like American breaststrokers tend to not be good till later, and so if that's any trajectory, like backtracking it, the yards record should be like 2 seconds faster than it was. It's a slow record, which is like, okay, he can't get the American record because he's Russian, unless he naturalizes or becomes a U.S. citizen or something like that. But like he could get the U.S. Open record, and it's slow enough that it's might be termed like low-hanging fruit. It's just not something that like the quote-unquote good breaststrokers have done, kind of in their prime. So it's the only really like in the amateur breaststroke community, the only one viewed as a good record is Ian Finerty, and everybody else was really slow, kind of thing. So yeah, and we're looking for like a good, we'd love that, just like from breaststrokers. Yeah, just saying. And then backstroke, individual medley. He's won gold medals. He had, in both of these, he set the world record in the 100-meter individual medley. So this guy's really good. I'm a little bit in the dark with Minakov, but I'm invested in watching him. So, I mean, in that sense, like, they're not going to be the exact same person, but they're both very skilled swimmers. We'll put it that way. So I wouldn't put it past him that he could potentially be able to do this, especially, yeah. Especially because they're both really good at butterfly and freestyle, and more consistent than Americans have been. And by consistent, I mean like not cherry picking Olympic games, like high frequency. So like 2 to 3 international competitions a year. That's something like for a decade on end. That's something Americans don't really do as on a whole. Not everybody, but some of like the quote unquote big names, they don't do that for whatever reason. Or big names in my lifetime, and I was born in 1992. So like specific, yeah. All right, and then the last thing is the name. They both have names that stick. So Vladimir Morozov, it's a good name. It's a butch name. Back to the man thing. Andrei Minakov. They're different names. They're different people. They're gonna have different legacies, but so far, so good. They both, I mean, Morozov is a legend, and I would say might be like the greatest of all time. At least for me. Vladimir Morozov. No pressure, Andrei Minakov. But I'm not putting that pressure on. I'm just making an observation about the respect I have for Vladimir Morozov, and it's very unique. Name Minakov. I'm like, I like the name in part. When I was on swim team, we'd have like Friday Fun Day, and we'd have this game called Sharks and Minnows, and we say swim minnows swim, and like Minakov is like minnows, like he's a little fish. Sorry, but like, and he has porcupine hair, and he's like a little fish, and he's in his freshman year of college, and he's a Minakov. Swim, Minakov, swim. You're different than Morozov. If you see this, you're different than Morozov. Be your own person.